Greetings. The resurrection of Wesley Everest was painted in 1997 on the side of the Centralia Square Antique Mall building. The building was owned by a former anti-war GI, one of the early anti-war GIs, John Regan. But the project itself was a collaboration involving a broad coalition of people from the Evergreen Labor Education Center at Evergreen College, the Central Labor Council, and different unions in Centralia itself. And it was done as a way to reach out to the new immigrant workers that were coming into the area. So I was very glad to work on this. We had a lot of volunteers on the project. It generated a lot of debate, both on the left and from the right, and you can follow some of this by going to the Red Square website, redsq.org. The imagery of the mural itself, there's a number of elements that perhaps need explaining. First of all, the central image is Wesley Everest, one of our great labor martyrs. He's rising from his grave. He's painted both as a worker and in his soldier's uniform because he was an anti-war vet. And he was lynched on Armistice Day, November 11th, 1919. Two kinds of people came back from the carnage of World War I. Those who marched around and celebrated it, like the American Legion, and those who said we must never do this again, anti-war veterans like Wesley Everest. On the left-hand side, you can see the Hall of the Industrial Workers of the World. Wesley Everest was a member of the Industrial Workers of the World, also referred to as the IWW or Wobblies, a militant industrial union that one of the first attempts to create industrial unions in the United States that had hundreds of thousands of members and supporters across the country. The Wobblies had headquarters in a lot of cities and towns, and here you can see them basically organizing to defend their union hall and also reading to educate themselves about the nature of capitalism and creating a new world in opposition. The sign on the headquarters, by the way, OBU, stands for One Big Union. Above the headquarters is a portrait of Tom Lassiter. He was a blind newsstand owner who sold socialist papers and the industrial workers. He was run out of town in 1918, shortly before the massacre. Right wing vets took him into the woods and left him there. He was blind. Rachel Corey, a student from Evergreen State who visited the mural and later was a martyr herself when she was killed by the Israeli Defense Forces opposing housing demolitions in Palestine, did a drawing of Tom based on my rendition and included it, and it was included in a book of her writings. And she pointed to the mural as being an important kind of art that was not just decorative, but that played an important role in changing society. Behind Lassiter, you can see that it is raining sabotages, the black cat, a symbol for sabotage. And by sabotage, basically it meant militant resistance by workers on the job. On the two stumps that we see, one is a reference to early loggers who were called timber beasts. And they were called beasts because basically they were treated like beasts. The conditions of early loggers was nightmarish conditions, the huts that workers were forced to live in, the cold, the wet, and the incredible danger of working in the logging industry, which is true to this day. On the other one is a trailer from one of the trailer parks that was created to house immigrant workers, basically. The immigrant workers coming into the area today are not given decent housing, but are basically funneled into cramped trailer parks, forced to live in very crowded and difficult circumstances. On the far right, we see the capitalist pig in front of the piles of gold. That's the enormous profits that are made from the labor of working people. And the two figures in front of the capitalists, one is a pork chopper, which is a union bureaucrat, a business unionist that basically seeks labor peace with the employers and often acts on the employer's behalf within the union movement. And that pork chopper is dancing with a blockhead. Mr. Block was a wobbly cartoon character. Basically, it's a worker who believes what the company tells them, what the boss tells them, what the government tells them, not thinking for themselves. And the jails that were often filled with workers, especially the Wobblies, who filled the jails in their fight for democratic rights, the free speech fights, and their actions on the job.